Hello, I'm Edward Hunter and welcome to Spa-Francorchamps for highlights from the 6th round of Season 2 of the VMS Platinum Split on Le Mans Ultimate. For the 4th time this season, Jerne Simoncic was the pole sister, but he was challenged into turn 1 by the Netherlands' Sven Gielhed, the yellow Ferrari positioning itself closely behind into Eau Rouge for an attack down the Kemmel Straight. Simoncic defended the inside line as they approached Le Combe, whilst Gielhed tried to go down the middle. However, whilst they were busy fighting each other, the second yellow Ferrari of Henrik Gamble sneakily used some virtual energy to breeze around the outside of both cars and sensationally leapfrog his way into the lead after a brilliant start from the German. GT3 would see Luke Whitehead start from pole position for the 5th time. However, reigning champion Prendergast was determined to make a move from 3rd, going 3 wide with Whitehead and Remy Delorme into La Source, a place where 3 into 1 tends not to work out. Whitehead's Ferrari incurred front damage in the incident, which meant the 296 understeered at the top of Radion, creating another chance for Prendergast to try and go around the outside down the Kemmel Straight. The Mustang pulled alongside, but Whitehead wasn't having any of it as Prendergast turned into Le Combe from the outside and found himself spinning into the runoff and falling to the back of the field. Marine Bessier also had to take to the runoff whilst fighting for 4th and would rejoin in between the 2 yellow Mustangs of Wojciech Polesny and Sebastian Wunsch. Wunsch, however, fancied the chance of gaining 5th place and pulled alongside the Aston Martin on the run into Bruxelles. Incredibly, the two left just enough space for each other, and neither would relent for the entirety of Sector 2 as they ran side by side. Bessier had the inside for Speaker's Corner, but Wunsch simply left enough space for an Aston Martin, and no more. Into Pouhon, it was now the Frenchman who held the inside line, but Wunsch absolutely refused to back out, tanking a small hit from Bessier. Amazingly, the pair decided to go side by side through the tricky Fanier chicane, and it was here that the 2-wide action finally separated as Wunsch at last got the upper hand. At the end of lap 2, Gielhed picked his moment to strike into the bus stop chicane, going up the inside of Simoncic's Peugeot. The Slovenian was uncharacteristically caught out by this, allowing the Ferrari to drive clean around the outside of him and relieve him of 2nd place. Meanwhile, Jules Neal was lining up a move on Daniele Farinelli for 7th around the outside at the bus stop. The Alpine inched ahead, but Farinelli dived back up the inside into La Source, and as Neal tucked in behind, he got a tap in the rear from Paul Lepaire's Ferrari, allowing Farinelli to escape and Hrutrishki to clear Lepere. At the back of GD3, Prendergast had quickly caught back up to the pack, but as Fabien Ballet and Luca Fingard ran side by side ahead of him, the British driver would have to pick his moment quickly. When Fingard's Porsche went off track at Radion, it created the perfect opportunity for Prendergast to slingshot his Mustang around the outside, down the Kemmel Straight, going up to 11th place. After winning out on the first lap, Seb Wunsch then lost the back end at Pouhon and ran into the runoff area, sacrificing his hard-fought 5th place back to Bessier. 7 minutes into the race, and it was full defensive manoeuvre time for Simoncic as his 3rd place was under attack from championship rival Fabio Grigoletto. The Italian launched his Ferrari around the outside and thought that he had the move done, only to slightly overshoot and dip into the gravel, allowing the Peugeot to gratefully retake its place on the podium. Now it was Grigoletto on the defensive as Niklaus Huben tried to go the long way around him through Bruxelles, but he washed out wide as Grigoletto held on to 4th. At the same time, things were also hotting up in the fight for 7th as Neal tried to send his Alpine around the outside of Farinelli at Le Combe. The Italian refused to roll over and the two bumped and banged into the side of each other, allowing Mikołaj Hrutrishki to capitalise in his Toyota. The Poles saw an opening when Neal was pushed wide into Malmedy to go up to 8th before immediately turning his attention to Farinelli. It was at Bruxelles a lap later that disaster would strike as Farinelli went wide, allowing Hrutrishki to pull his front wheels alongside, but then he made contact with the back of the Ferrari, spinning Farinelli around in a move that would later earn the pole a 15-second penalty, as he narrowly fended off Neal's Alpine. 13 minutes in and Prendergast had cleared Ballet and now would breeze past the McLaren of Regan Mitchell to climb back into the top 9. The hypercars then had to lap the GD3 field, and there was a scary moment for Grigoletto as he had to take to the gravel at Paul Frere to avoid Ballet. At the end of the lap, Polesny rolled the dice and pit from 4th, trying to use a massive undercut to gain track position. Whitehead then had a double shock as first Gielhed, then Simoncic emerged either side of him in their own battle for second. Fingard, though, was about to exit stage left as the Porsche snapped around on him at Blanchimont and then sent him into the wall and out of the race in dramatic fashion. Prendergast's recovery also continued as he now challenged Michel Rodriguez in an identical Ford Mustang for 7th, easily clearing him again down the Kemmel Straight. 25 minutes in and Simoncic tried to make a move on Gielhed, only for the Dutchman to lose control over the curb and slide into the Slovenian in a heart-stopping moment. Luckily, some cat-like reflexes from both drivers meant that they narrowly avoided disaster, but Gielhed was forced to cut across the runoff and relinquish second place. At half distance, Remy Delorme pit from second place in GD3, emerging 3 seconds ahead of Polesny. With 25 minutes to go, Gamble was running low on virtual energy, and with Simoncic bearing down on him, he dived into the pit lane, followed by Huben in the 51 Ferrari on the same strategy. Grigoletto then pit with 19 minutes left to go and emerged ahead of Gamble after a short stop, but Neal was all over the back of Hatrushki, who defended very aggressively down the Kemmel Straight. Neither driver was willing to back down, and the two eventually locked wheels, sending both into the gravel as Neal survived a hit with the wall. Gielhed then pit with 17 minutes to go, emerging behind Gamble and was joined by Hoyer, Hatrushki and Lepere. Polesny then made a catastrophic mistake at Radion trying to keep up with Delorme as he lost control and slammed into the wall at the top of the hill, ending his Sprint Cup hopes. With 15 minutes remaining, Simoncic made his pit stop along with Whitehead, Bessier and Neal. Simoncic would emerge briefly behind Bessier's Aston Martin, but 4 seconds ahead of Grigoletto and still in the lead of the race. Neal, though, would have much more action as he exited the pits, with Hatrushki narrowly maintaining 6th place by driving around the outside of him. Gielhed now picked his moment to attack Gamble for 3rd, but move up the inside through the bus stop chicane, which he maintained around the outside on exit. As the Dutchman took the inside for La Source, Schindler, Wunsch, Mark Veit and Prendergast all pit in GD3 class, handing the lead back to Whitehead. Gamble was not about to take this sitting down and slipstream his way alongside Gielhed into Les Combes. Gielhed launched his car around the outside and made contact with Gamble, shoving the German onto the gravel as he then spun into the wall and out of the race, a very sad end to what had been a brilliant drive. 7 minutes to go and Prendergast launched his Mustang around the outside of Veit's Aston Martin for 6th in GD3 at the bus stop chicane. The British driver was late on the brakes and controlled the apex on exit, gaining another position. Gielhed then duked it out with Grigoletto for several minutes, finally getting past on the penultimate lap by challenging around the outside at Bruxelles. With the championship lead on the line, Grigoletto was not about to make it easy for him, but he ran a little wide through Speaker's Corner, and that was all the invitation the Dutchman needed to go up the inside at Pouhon, snatching 2nd place from the Italian. Gielhed's charge would fall just short of victory, as it was Simoncic who took the honours for the 2nd race in a row, a crucial boost to his title chances. Whitehead similarly would take his 2nd win on the bounce, getting to do a whole extra lap as the only GD3 car not to go 4 laps down, which he celebrated with a pirouette. Another perfect strategic masterclass from Simoncic as Gielhed took his best result to date in 2nd, just ahead of a slightly disappointed Grigoletto. Huben was close but so far in 4th. Michi Hoyer had a solid run to 5th. Jules Neal took his first points of the season in 6th after Hatrushki's penalty dropped him behind the Frenchman. Lepere just missed out on an extra few points in 8th. Farinelli was the last finisher in 9th, and Gamble, after such a strong start to his race, would come away with nothing. In GD3, Whitehead had a 13-second lead on the final lap, but his extra tour ballooned it out to an even more dominant victory. Delorme took his first podium in 2nd, as Schindler held off a charging Bessier to take a crucial 3rd by just 1 second. Wunsch got good points on his return in 5th. Prendergast will rue his costly incident with Whitehead on the first lap, but still recovered to 6th. Veit took 7th ahead of Rodriguez, Mitchell and Ballet, whilst Polesny's crash sees his season unravel and Fingard will be switching to the Lamborghini Huracan for the final 2 races. In the overall standings, Simoncic has sensationally snatched the hypercar lead from Grigoletto, who trails him by 4 points with 2 rounds remaining. Huben is a further 10 points behind, then there's a big gap to Gielhed, another 20 points further back. Reigning champion Hoyer moves back up to 5th, just 2 points ahead of Marco De Buono and 3 ahead of James Baldwin. Arda Erchan is 8th, Joe McCauley is still 9th, and Farinelli rounds out the top 10. In the GD3 points, Schindler still leads on 100 points exactly, but sees his lead to Whitehead cut to just 3 points. Bad days in Spa for Prendergast and Polesny mean they're 21 points off the lead and equal in 3rd. Wunsch is still 5th but only 5 points ahead of Delorme, who leaps up to 6th, just a point ahead of Timotei and Danovsky. Bessier is now equal 8th with Thomas Leiden, whilst Rodriguez fills out the top 10. With one more sprint round to go in Qatar, here's how the sprint points shake out. Simoncic leads Grigolato by 7 points, making a winner-takes-all contest between the two. Gielhed is 3rd, 9 points ahead of Huben. Baldwin rounds out the top 5 eligible for prize money, but is 2 points ahead of De Buono, whilst reigning sprint champion Hoyer is 9 points away from some pride-healing prize money. Finally, in the GD3 Sprint Cup, Whitehead leads Schindler by just 6 points, whilst Prendergast is mathematically still in contention. He would need to win in Qatar, with Whitehead failing to score and Schindler 7th or worse to retain his Sprint Cup title. Delorme is a very credible 4th, Polesny rounds out the top 5 but is just 2 points ahead of Bessier, with Wunsch and Danovsky also just a few points further back. The stage is set for a tense penultimate round of the Season 2 in Losail this Sunday. Don't miss it.